It's Wednesday, March 15th, and this is now on HNN. The man arrested after a body was discovered inside a burned car at Mililani High School has been charged with murder.
It can be life-threatening for kids.
A warning from pediatricians about items found in almost every home. Lynn Kawano investigates.
Severe storms from coast to coast. I'm Jared Hill in a windy New York City with how this late winter weather is impacting the nation and who could be hit next.
It's not what I thought Paris was going to look like.
These stories, plus why are there piles of trash on the streets of Paris? Details coming up on This Is Now.
Aloha and good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on This Is Now. The suspect in a gruesome Mililani murder has been charged as we continue to learn more about the victim.
That's right. 25-year-old Samuel Jones was arrested after a body was discovered in a burned car at Mililani High School. Prosecutors have charged Jones with second-degree murder and first-degree arson. His bail is set at $1 million. Meanwhile, family members have identified the victim as Jordan Laulusa. She was just 21 years old. They say she died from a stab wound to her neck, and a memorial has been set up along a fence at the school's campus with balloons, flowers, and signs.
Laulusa was also a soldier with the Hawaii Army National Guard. Officials say she joined the Guard in 2019 and served as a supply specialist.
HPD arrested a man suspected of a shooting in Kaneohe. Investigators say two men were involved in a fight last week when the shooting happened at a gas station on Kaneohe Bay Drive. The suspect was identified on Sunday and officers arrested the 30-year-old man yesterday. He was booked on suspicion of attempted murder along with firearms offenses.
Our chief investigative reporter Lynn Kawano is launching a series of stories on the dangers of lithium batteries. For more on this, we welcome her now. Aloha, Lynn.
Aloha, Dylan.
So tell us about these stories. What have you learned so far?
Well, pretty telling. You know, we did an experiment with spam and these little coin batteries. These are the little batteries that you find in your car key fobs, some of the remote controls, hearing aids. So they're everywhere. Those little greeting cards, right? People can take them out and put them down. The danger really comes when a toddler picks it up because they don't know better. They don't know they're not supposed to eat a battery. So this experiment shows parents why those batteries are so dangerous. And what doctors have really told us is they've been getting more and more kids coming to the ER with these batteries lodged in their throat. And while that sounds like a choking hazard, it is that, but it's even worse. And the reason we use the spam experiment is to show you how these batteries give off a charge and they actually cause a chemical burn in a child's throat when it becomes stuck in the throat. And kids have died, nationally kids have died because of that, because you have to get that battery out. The spam experiment will show you in just minutes, it's going to start causing a chemical burn. There's even a part where the liquid in the spam starts to boil because the battery is giving off such a high charge, and that's what's happening in a child's throat. So this is more for parents to really understand that when you change the battery, don't just leave it on the counter and walk away to use your car key fob, or actually make sure you dispose of it. Just throw it away so a child doesn't see it.
Mm-hmm. Locally, what kind of injuries or how many injuries have been reported here by doctors? Do we know how that compares to the national level of reported injuries?
We spoke with a pediatrician at Kapilani Medical Center for Women and Children. Sorry, that was just a mouthful. But they told us they see about 5 kids a year coming in with these kinds of injuries. So while it's not to the level of, California and Texas and those bigger states, we're still seeing it. That's a handful of kids going to the ER every year, or toddlers. A lot of times they're about 18 months or a year or even younger, because that's the point where they're putting things in their mouth, right? They see something shiny, they put it in their mouth. So the parents realize that the batteries are gone, and we haven't had a death as far as that pediatrician knows and that pediatrician told us. But it's bound to happen if these batteries become more popular. They're already extremely popular. The one thing is that the parents of a child who died in Texas pushed for legislation, pushed for better warning labels, better packaging, and we are starting to see that now. So this is a benefit for the rest of us, right? Her tragedy has turned to help others and other kids. Duracell announced that they're going to have a coating on those batteries. It's really just a bad flavor, so that if a child puts it in their mouth, perhaps the child will then spit it out instead of trying to swallow it. Also, the packaging now. I mean, I tried to open one of these, and it is becoming not just child-proof, it's like adult-proof. But that's a good thing, right? You don't want kids to be able to get into it. So they're trying to do things. That's for new batteries, but really the issue is old batteries, right? When you take out the old one, put in the new one, don't leave that old one lying around.
So many people all the time ask us how we get our stories. How did you get the idea for this story, and how did it come about?
Really, it's the Big Island Fire Department. I want to thank them because they were the only department that invited us over as they were doing lithium battery training. And that's all kinds of batteries, right? But part of the training class included a battery, a little battery, and they talked about choking hazards. They talked about what it does to a child, everything that I'm doing in my report. And because of their class, we were able to get an idea of what's happening, what they're seeing, what rescuers are worried about, and what first responders are worried about. It's an eye-opening experiment with the spam that we did. So really it was that taught us about the dangers of lithium batteries. And then I started, talking to some of our affiliates. We're owned by Gray, and Gray stations have also seen some of these and done some of these stories as well. And that really opened my eyes as to how big of a problem this is. And because of the Big Island Fire Department, I've gotten a series of stories, right? So the next one, the second part, is about those micro mobility devices. That's e-scooters, e-bikes, hoverboards. They've got a lot of those now. That's a good form of transportation, especially for college kids, for young kids, for teens. But there are dangers. We've seen the videos, and when you're charging them. So we have some tips that we learned from that class, from the Big Island Fire Department, just on how to keep yourself safe and your family safe.
Well, we are definitely looking forward to the rest of your reports. All of those reports in this series are coming up on Hawaii News Now. Our chief investigative reporter, Lynn Kawano, thanks so much for your time.
A federal lawsuit has been filed against the operator of the Nakoa. That's the yacht that ran aground at Maui's Honolulu Bay and later sank as it was being towed away. At stake is who will pay the state for the removal and damage caused to the reef, which comes out to at least $460,000. The lawsuit accuses Jim Jones of negligence and misrepresentation, which may have canceled out his insurance coverage. The trustee owners of Nakoa say they sold the yacht to Jones in December, and they argue that a family cruise that Jones went on that grounded the Nakoa not only violated state rules, but also their contracts to purchase and insure the vessel. They say Jones was required to follow all the laws and have a captain approved by the insurance company. But on the day of the grounding, the suit claims Nakoa did not have an approved captain. We spoke to a maritime law expert who says this complicates how the state and ultimately the taxpayers will get their money back.
If the insurance company says that the insurance contract was void because they didn't get to deal with the captain's qualifications, then that insurance company is not going to be a possible source to get the money to pay back the public.
The lawsuit is seeking to have Jones repay the value of the yacht and also the salvage and environmental costs. His other charter yacht could be seized to help pay these costs. The website of his company, Mililani Yacht Charters, says they are no longer operating, and Jones did not return our calls or texts for a response.
The Red Hill Joint Task Force is developing an environmental assessment as it plans to remove fuel from the Red Hill facility. The assessment officially begins on Monday, and it will analyze the potential environmental impacts of options for relocating 104 million gallons of fuel by tanker ship. The process is not expected to impact the defueling timeline. Happening today, Mayor Blangiardi is set to sign 2 bills that address the concerns of rising sea levels and coastal erosion. Bill 41 is designed to help mitigate future loss of public beaches and properties and structures, while Bill 42 focuses on improving controls for shoreline development. These measures come as the island continues to see impacts of climate change, most recently seen in severe road erosion in Hau'ula, as well as the North Shore home that collapsed into the ocean last year.
The future of abortion pills in the U.S. is in question with a lawsuit underway in Texas. A U.S. District Court judge is holding a hearing on whether to ban the sale of mifepristone even in states where the drug is legal. Michael George has more.
Protesters gathered at this Texas courthouse, where a conservative federal judge is considering a case that could halt nationwide use of the abortion pill mifepristone.
After the overturn of Roe, millions of women have lost access to abortion care, especially here in Texas. So the access to medication abortion is one of the last options that we have.
The lawsuit, filed by anti-abortion groups, is asking for an immediate order that would revoke or suspend the drug's FDA approval. More than 20 years ago, the FDA gave mifepristone the green light in combination with a second pill as a safe and effective method to induce a medicated abortion.
What people are asking for is not just say that the FDA was incorrect in approving mifepristone, not just for this district in Texas, but nationwide.
Government lawyers contend taking the drug off the market would unravel reproductive care for women in the U.S. and undermine federal oversight of prescription drugs.
This case could have profound implications for access to abortion throughout the entire United States. Targeting medication abortion is a way of really cracking down and enforcing these draconian abortion restrictions that have popped up and are being enforced in so many states in the wake of the Supreme Court overruling Roe.
Danco Laboratories, which makes the drug, is joining the FDA in arguing to keep the pill available. Justice Department attorneys would likely appeal any decision against mifepristone and seek an emergency stay to prevent the ruling from taking effect. Michael George, CBS News.
Keeping an eye on national news now, we are joined by Hawaii News Now's White House correspondent John Decker. Aloha, John. Thanks for joining us. A few questions for you today. First off, on U.S. and Russia. They have conflicting accounts of the collision on Tuesday between an American surveillance drone and a Russian fighter jet. What is each side saying happened?
Well, I think the big conflict is where this occurred. According to the U.S., this incident happened in international waters, in international airspace. Russia disagrees. They said it was very close to the Russian border, specifically near the Crimea area of Ukraine. That being said, I think both acknowledge that there was some interaction between this Reaper drone and an Su-27 Russian military plane, and it clearly was an aggressive pilot on the Russian part, which ultimately led the U.S. Because of the fact that it was so aggressive, it touched the propeller of this Reaper drone to put down the drone into the Black Sea, and that's where the remnants of this drone remain right now.
Let's turn to some financial news now. Two prominent Democrats have introduced a bill to tighten bank regulations following the collapse of the Silicon Valley Bank. What's the momentum like in Congress for this legislation to possibly pass?
There is some momentum on the Democratic side of the aisle. Katie Porter, she's a Democratic congresswoman from California. Elizabeth Warren, another Democrat from Massachusetts in the Senate. They've introduced this companion legislation for both the House and the Senate. 50 Democrats have already said that they would support this legislation, tightening up regulations for smaller banks, medium-sized banks, regional banks. The problem is in the Senate and in the House. In the Senate, two Democratic senators who voted for a bill loosening regulations, Mark Warner of Virginia and Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire, have both said they stand by their votes on what they voted on back in 2018. And on the Republican side of things in the House, they now control the House of Representatives, making it that much more difficult to pass this type of legislation in the House. So I don't think it will go very far in Congress.
Keeping an eye on it all is HNN's White House correspondent John Decker. Thank you so much for your time, John. Have a great day.
Banking fears continue to spread across U.S. markets. The Dow fell 500 points at today's open. The S&P and Nasdaq slipped roughly 2% and 1.5% respectively. Meanwhile, shares of Wells Fargo dropped nearly 5%. J.P. Morgan Chase also slipped nearly 4%. Another concern, how the Federal Reserve plans to move forward with its interest rate hiking campaign. The Office of Hawaiian Affairs is speaking out after a recent state audit criticized the organization. Now, the report claims that OHA is not making responsible real estate and development decisions. Casey Lund has more.
Aloha from Kewalo Basin here, overlooking that 30 acres of land that was given to OHA by the state back in 2012. I want to get to that audit, and State Auditor Les Kondo said that OHA's plan and policies surrounding real estate and acquisitions is, quote, risky. And I actually want to read a portion of his report. He said, quote, "We found the agency's approach to real estate transactions has been ad hoc, raising questions about whether OHA trustees are fulfilling their fiduciary responsibilities to their beneficiaries." And we have a trustee with us today, trustee at large, Dr. Keli'i Akina. Aloha to you. I want to ask you how you react to Mr. Kondo's assessment and his audit.
Well, thank you, Casey, for inviting me here, and to all the viewers, just glad to be here. Audits are tough medicine, but in the end, they're good for the soul. I think the auditor pointed out something that is true. The people of Hawaii, both Hawaiian and non-Hawaiian, deserve to see more progress in the development of Kaka'ako Makai, no question about it. But at the same time, the audit leaves out the fact that OHA has made significant progress toward being able to make its decisions regarding land, such as Kaka'ako Makai. For one thing, OHA has implemented the vast majority of previous audit recommendations and really cleaned up its act. No longer a place of fraud, waste, and abuse, but of accountability where we can actually plan for the future.
And I know, when we talked earlier today, you said that you're speaking as a trustee on your own, right? You're not representing the entire organization, but I do want to ask you how OHA feels, if you can gauge sort of the sentiment surrounding the legislation that is in the House and the Senate now that would allow the development here for Haku'one, which is obviously, you have to admit, relatively controversial within the community. How confident is the organization and you as a trustee that this will be the year that legislation passes and that development will move forward?
Well, at the outset, OHA has no control over what the legislature will decide, but we put forth our best effort. OHA is trying to develop the maximum value of the land for the people of Hawaii. In particular, on 9 of our parcels, we'd like to see 3 of them develop residential development. And that's not on the ocean front. That's not across from any of the existing towers in Kaka'ako. But it will help this land to produce the revenues that will serve the Hawaiian people. OHA's just going to give it its best shot during the legislature and see what the outcome is.
And I know the OHA is reaching out to folks for public comment, for public testimony. We'll get an opportunity for people to do that online at HawaiiNewsNow.com. I want to make it very clear that we also reached out to groups that oppose that development. We gave them a chance to speak today in this story, Friends of Kewalos. We also reached out to senators as well as representatives in the House of Representatives at the state capitol. We were denied an interview request and they declined to comment on this story today. Reporting at Kewalo, I'm Casey Lunn. Now back to you.
A major winter storm is bringing heaps of heavy snow to parts of the Northeast as another atmospheric river inundates the West. In California, more than 30 million people are currently under flood alerts. Jared Hill reports from New York.
Spring may be a week away, but parts of the Northeast are digging out after the first nor'easter of the winter season. Parts of New England saw as much as 3 feet of heavy, wet snow.
Honestly, the heaviest snow I've ever seen. It should be a new category.
It's New England, and it's still March. Winter's not over yet.
The winds and snow snapped trees and weighed down power lines, leaving tens of thousands without power.
Internet's down, Wi-Fi is terrible. I mean, our cell phones don't work up here right now.
During the worst part of the storm, more than 2,000 flights were canceled, many at Boston Logan International Airport.
I got on a flight that was 10 hours later, so I've been waiting and tracking that flight, and that one was just canceled.
Here in New York City, the snow didn't stick around, but the wind has, with gusts potentially topping 40 miles per hour. In California, more than 30 million people were under flood alerts due to yet another brutal atmospheric river.
It's definitely higher than it's ever been in my lifetime.
The rain pummeled the state further north, causing a mudslide that slammed into this house north of Sacramento. About 100 people were trapped when floodwaters washed out roads and bridges in Tulare County.
We did airlift into multiple points across the county. Emergency food rations and water.
While the West deals with the aftermath of its 11th atmospheric river of the season, the system heads east, leading to potentially severe storms across the South later this week. Jared Hill, CBS News.
And here's a live look outside over San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge right there. Today is a beautiful day, but as you just heard, it was a different story. Here locally, our weather could also be changing. Here's Guy Hoggy.
We're tracking this weak atmospheric river front that's kind of over Kauai. Going to be wet for them through tonight. Drier for the east end of the state, and then drier going into the weekend. However, looks like Saturday night, some of that front will drop in over Kauai. And then by Monday, we're going to see it move across the state. So Monday, Tuesday, maybe even into Wednesday, look for more scattered showers. But until then, most of the showers today will favor the west end of the state. Really, not so much rain after that, although with the winds running a little slow from the southwest, there's a chance for some afternoon pop-up showers, so don't rule that out. Although overall, it's going to be fairly dry into Sunday. And then that weak front drops in sometime between Monday and Tuesday, maybe as early as Sunday for Kauai. And we could see that rain linger into the middle of next week.
As the City of Love prepares to host the next major Olympics, there's a problem plaguing the streets of Paris. Elaine Cobb has more.
In one of the most romantic and picturesque places on the planet, heaped towers of trash are spoiling the scene.
I didn't expect it, and so I'm like, okay, well, this is the first time I've seen Paris. It's not what I thought Paris was going to look like.
Garbage collectors are on strike for a second week, protesting pension reforms that include raising the retirement age by 2 years.
There's lots of garbage on each corner, doesn't make it look as nice.
French officials are warning of a health hazard as rats run wild, ripping up uncollected garbage bags. It's terrible, this Parisian says. It smells bad, it's ugly, and I've seen the rodents. Adding to the problem, strikers have blockaded the 3 garbage treatment plants in the French capital.
There's got to be a better way than to just let it pile up and stop your job. It doesn't seem to be doing any good.
Even though it does spoil a lot of the view and the smell, I do support the strikes.
As waste keeps piling up, so does pressure on the mayor of Paris, who supports the strikers and rejects government plans to force a cleanup. Elaine Cobb, CBS News, Paris.
It's time to check out some good news now. Sorry, guys, I always forget that little slide right there. We want to show you some really cool news out of NASA. Take a look at this. They unveiled some new prototypes for their spacesuits today. This is what essentially the astronauts will be wearing in their upcoming mission during the Artemis mission sometime later this decade. These new suits come with specialized tools like an HD video camera and light band on the visor of the helmet. The ones astronauts will actually wear in space will be white. Again, this is just a prototype here. NASA says the lighter color helps deal with extremely high temperatures. So some pretty cool stuff there.
Yeah, it looks really comfy. They can be really mobile. You can see this guy doing lunges and squats. So.
Yeah, I was actually listening to one of the morning shows today, and they said mobility was an issue with the very first suits. I mean, they played video from that first early on in the moon landings, and those guys couldn't even bend down to pick anything up. So mobility and flexibility and movement was definitely something that they wanted to improve with this here.
I heard they can actually like swing a golf club and
yeah, for sure. Golfing in space. I'm sure that'll be fun.
Well, thanks for watching This Is Now, everyone. We're going to have much more headlines coming up on First at 4 on KHNL. And of course, we're streaming everywhere and we have podcasts available. You can find it anywhere you listen to your podcast. Happy Aloha Wednesday and have a great one.